Buddy. On YouTube. Let's see if this actually comes up and starts working. We'll see. Oh, yeah, look at that. So, Lady B, it says system error. Please contact support. So it's Thailand's servers that are freaking out, not us. Hi. Mercury is in retrograde. That's all I'm saying. CPT stream is offline. Yeah, there's something. Hey. Good Lord. Sorry about this, guys. How you doing? I'm trying to fix this as we go. There's a issue with the... Yeah, there you go. CPT is off the air? It is? Is it off the... Is it just not streaming, or is it... on the... Okay. Thank you, Ax.
Hey, how is Eli?
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Um...
Am I okay? The transitions are okay?
The what's are okay, sorry?
Transitions.
Yeah, no, they're great. Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate you jumping in to run the board while she's trying to fix this, too. Apparently we were getting... I guess people were saying there was dead air on CPT, so for a second. So whatever we turned off and turned back on, there you go. Now they're getting the CPT feed, so everybody seems to be comfortable in that regard, I suppose.
Right.
Yes, and we do have the our guest calling in. I'm guessing if he knows if he's got it right. I gave him all the info, so if he calls in, let me know.
Okay.
And yeah.
You have a minute left.
Okay, great. Okay, cool.
And Lady V is still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's her, and I don't think it's me. I think it's the issue with the Thailand software. It says it keeps trying to authenticate, and it's not her. Although it's authenticating, it's trying again now, so it very well may be her monkeying around that's helping things. So tell her to keep at it. But it's not her fault. I want her to know that. That's for damn sure. Okay, so.
35 seconds.
Cool.
All right, 20 seconds.
Cool. Whoops. Just calm down. All right, here we go.
Illegal and deadly. Drive now, text later. You can't do both. This message brought to you by the Illinois Tollway State Police, Department of Transportation, Secretary of State, and AAA.
Fixing it. Look at that. Whoops. That's playing the opening. You don't have to play the whole opening. We're here. Like, we're just gonna start the show over from scratch. Hey everybody. So yeah. So Johnny, you watched this whole David Hogg situation that played out with Laura Ingraham. Did you not? Did you see that this week?
Yeah, it looked to me like he had a gun, and when Laura Ingraham got there, she was justified in filling him full of bullets.
Right. Yeah. It was just she was a good lady with an opinion to stop a bad boy with an opinion. Right. I guess is the theory we're operating on. But understand that when you're talking to someone on Fox News, you always have to kind of take this, and I guess anybody with a political axe to grind always carries within them a secondary. I obviously am aware of my political bent and my agendas internally when I'm talking to somebody else. But oftentimes when I'm talking to somebody that I know I differ with, that I clearly, have a political divide, that may be a chasm, maybe insurmountable, but that you take some you can patiently talk to someone who you know is not going to get any movement on. You're not going to get any. This person is not going to change from your conversation, and understand that what you're really doing is talking past her to anybody else in her crowd who might be reachable, right? This is one of the arguments for civility, or when you are going to be incivil, being at least funny, right? These are great elements of human interaction. It's one of the reasons why, sarcasm and the political comedy that America is known for has been so valuable over time. Because if I have to say something to you that's gonna, arguably take the piss, then it's best if I'm funny about it, because we can both have a laugh at what a big jerk you're being, is the theory, right? And in terms of Laura Ingraham, that is something she's incapable of. She doesn't have a humorous bone in her body, right? She's incapable of being funny. And so the only way to take any criticism she throws is as disdain, as is, an attack. There is no sharing of this problem, right? Okay, so that's the initial issue. And Laura Ingraham isn't the first of these guys to do this by any stretch of the imagination, to attack a victim. I mean, Alex Jones has made a living out of calling the parents of dead 6-year-olds fakers, actors, charlatans, CIA spooks, monsters. He calls them satanic. That's the far end of it, and you can kind of expect that in the far reaches, the nether regions, as it were, of YouTube and AM radio. But Laura Ingraham is supposed to be a respected voice, right? At least to some degree. And her idea, her choice to mock David Hogg for not getting into college, when he has by the way, a higher GPA than I did, certainly. And we have no idea what hers was. What?
Did he get a 4.1? Is it up to 5 now?
I don't know. I always remember being like 4.2 to 4.6 was pretty darn high, and if it was over 4, you were college material. What was yours? Do you remember?
Getting out of high school?
Yeah.
Oh man. Maybe like 1.98.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not a student.
Yeah, I would, I pride myself. When a bill passes the Senate overwhelmingly, I would be lucky if my GPA was the low version, the low side, the side that voted against, right? Only 2%.
Our high school did a wonderful thing of letting you know where you ranked in your class.
Yes.
I was way towards the bottom.
I was actually so low, I was in the class below us. They had to actually...
That's amazing.
Yeah, they actually had to make me, technically a grade lower. But again, the point isn't even that this kid, who was, for all practical purposes, just being a high school student before he was thrust into this circumstance by being shot at while his fellow students were mowed down, who is lucky to be alive. And this woman is going to come out of the blue and just kind of decide, apropos to nothing, to criticize his grades and his status as a high school student. And this is the worst part. Okay, yes, she's awful, right? And Charles in our chat room is saying if you're over 4.0, you qualify for advanced placement. So okay, so at the very least, nothing to sneeze at. And Carl in our chat room notedly points out that I earned straight ADDs. So which was,
And actually, if you do the math, 1A and 2
Yeah, that's pretty close, right?
Yeah.
I passed, right? And by the way, much love to our super chatters, Billy and Hal Vickery and James and thank you guys so much for contributing. Considering we are limping by on such low technology today, you guys are awesome. But again, my biggest problem with Laura Ingraham, besides her general awfulness, is what she did was this classic right-wing apology, which I am tired of and should no longer be tolerated in media. This is the bone I have to pick with this whole circumstance, okay? She says, "I'm sorry if what I said upset anyone." That's not an apology. That is calling the person you attacked weak. That in and of itself is another dig. And anytime that, and I know Fox won't do it, but anytime MSNBC or CNN or the regular news or 60 Minutes or any of that marches one of these idiots out who said something vile or racist or derogatory or, prejudiced or simply derisive of the victim of violence, toward the victim of violence, I don't want any of these news people to give them a pass to like, "I'm sorry if what I said upset anyone." Either you're sorry for what you said or you're not. And if you're sorry for what you said, part of the apology is tell me what was wrong about what you said. Okay, so maybe people know, some people know in our chat room certainly, and Ginger and I think Julie and even Carl know this because I've had interaction with them in person. When I talk about how I father my son, how I make him what I hope to be is a really good man when he grows up. And one of the ways I do it is when he acted out when he was little, instead of just having him say sorry, I would have him come over to me, explain what happened, what did he do, and then I'd tell him, go over and tell your grandma sorry. Tell her why you're sorry, what you're sorry for. What did you do? I'm sorry for, kicking you in the shin, or I'm sorry for talking back, or I'm sorry for throwing something, whatever it was. You tell them you're sorry for that, and then you come back to me and you tell me what they said. And they invariably they'd always accept his apology and say, "Well, please don't do that again." And that was that. And he would come over, and then I would go, "I love you. That's so great," and I'd give him a hug. And
Sorry, I wasn't nice to him when he apologized to me, by the way, but it was unforgivable.
So, but in all honesty, that's how I create, a sense of empathy for what you did wrong in that circumstance of my kid. That's what I'm trying to do. And it seems like Laura Ingraham, and I don't know her parents, it was either raised wrong or afterwards rebelled from her parents' attempts to make her a good person by falling in with a bad crowd of ne'er-do-wells at Fox News. These hanging out on street corners.
Capital Mayor.
Yes. Sexually, harassing people on the street corner. The Cat Call Network. And she joined in with this crowd of ne'er-do-wells. And they taught her a bad habit. And that bad habit is a fake apology. So hopefully, morally, emotionally, we'll all learn a valuable lesson today in how to apologize if in the future we do anything that we think deserves an apology. And if you don't think what you said was something you should have to apologize for, don't apologize for it. Explain yourself. That's it. So we got to take a break. We'll be back after this. Hopefully, we're working out our technical beats, as we always do. And thank you guys for hanging in there. And thank you, Johnny Million, for picking up most of the slack, being the clearest voice on the show today. If not in content, at least in volume.
That's right, yeah, just pure clarity.
That's right.
With what I'm saying.
That's right. All right, we'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Banana phone.
Don't say banana phone on the air. Yep. So this is Tyline's fault today.
I'm not going to release the Democratic memo. It was good for the goose, was good for the gander. He was all for releasing the Republican memo. Let's release this. Because, the media lies, but this is true. He released it.
You can listen to The Ricky Henman Show every Saturday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on WCPT 820.
There's no question.
I appreciate that, Sandra and Billy and Hal Vickery. Oh, and James Etling. I didn't see that. I beg your pardon. I think I said it, but I don't remember if I did.
Solution to satisfy everyone. It's called Krill
Yeah.
Omega 50 Plus. It combines ultra pure fish
The Hal Sparks Melania living away from the White House.
oil together.
I got to start announcing what you guys call these things. I'm going to do that when we come back.
Health of your heart and your arteries. And if that wasn't enough, it could
It's not.
also boost your joint comfort in just days. We're so sure Krill Omega
Hey, this is
50
Hal real quick. I'm still getting an echo back from the phone line
put to the test.
feeding back to me. So if we do have a guest, they won't be able to hear themselves.
And now
So the mix minus is not going to the phone lines. And then Johnny could be louder heading my way as well. I mean, I'm on a phone. Beggars can't be choosers, but... So the feed to the phones needs to be louder and not have... Yeah.
1 minute.
Okay. Did you hear me while I was talking? I don't know if you heard me. No. So I'm still hearing an echo feeding back into from the phone line. I'm hearing myself. And Johnny could be louder heading into the phones too, if you can bring him up.
Yeah, I will.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Lady B is trying one more time. She says she has to try it in 30 minutes. But if you want the code, the password.
No, I have it. It's not that. It's not her either. It's the Tyline servers. I got an error that said call support. It's not. So she might want to call Tyline support if she wants to do something during that 30 minutes instead of pulling her hair out in frustration. Yeah, thank you.
600-600-9969.
Warm water.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the Mega Worldwide Radio Program with Hal Sparks.
That's, I mean, if you say anything, Dick K sounds loud and clear. Yeah, just who cares about syntax is not important when you have a legend.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm getting a really loud echo now. Okay. All right. Well, we'll just operate as if, and if I say a bunch of ums, it's because I'm psychologically pacing myself. Right. So, and by the way, I wanted to say that the chat room has been super chatting like mad, which I really appreciate. Sandra said, indeed, Laura Ingraham was raised wrong in her super chat. Billy said the Hal Sparks Melania donated to the Hal Sparks Melania Living Away from the White House Fund. That's a story in and of itself. And then in honor of Laura Ingraham, Hal Vickery, and then James Etling said, earmarking for system redundancy. Thank you. Appreciate that, which we will need in future. And Act simply just said, and we're on, when I got the feed up. By the way, the YouTube audio is riding along just fine. Just not an issue every single time. I don't understand it. Right. So, let's be real. Okay, so that was my rant on the Laura Ingraham aspect of this. There obviously was a lot of other stuff that happened this week. You had, especially when it comes to I mean, there was a man shot in his grandmother's backyard 8 times, unarmed, on effectively his own property. And there is no point, no one seems to be able to make a case of why you are storming into the backyard of this house in the first place and then end up shooting a resident. Now, this isn't the only time this has happened. This happens with some frequency. You had that. Say again?
Track of all of the shooting.
Yeah, well, you couldn't possibly keep track. The reality is,
The one with the guy being shot like outside his grandma's place, did the news about the one outside the store. I am embarrassed to say that I started to cross them in my head.
that's completely understandable. I mean, you could even load it. I mean, think about the guy who was swatted by the fellow gamer, and the SWAT team showed up at his door and killed him. And because, like Alton Sterling, they had been told by a caller, there is an armed man here. And yeah, Shirley in our in our chat room saying he was armed. He had a telephone, right? Yeah, the pen being mightier than the sword. She's being ironic, of course. And Billy in our chat is saying it's shot in the back 7 times according to the autopsy. Yeah, according to the autopsy, the first shot hit him in the side, spun him, and the rest of the shots hit him in the back. Any of them would have been a kill shot, according to the autopsy. So again, it also begs the reason, in a situation where you have let's say it's a real assailant, a person who is armed, and this is a standoff with the police, or what have you, why is every cop's gun drawn? Who's going to miss? What kind of Wild West or old, like, 40s Miller's Crossing gunning down the speakeasy scene do we need to deal with, especially with modern weapons being what they are? It is as if police are trained to act as if they have muskets. You know what I mean? Actually, I take that back, because muskets you would actually rotate. You would have 6 guys fire and the other guys load while the next guys fire. So they would pace themselves. Now you've got guys with 10, 12 clip guns. Everybody is drawn on the same single individual. No one is in the process of doing an unarmed discussion with the suspect to de-escalate the situation. And when they are trying to de-escalate, they are literally doing it while aiming and holding the gun close, which in the Alton Sterling thing, I mean, is crazy. How they had a hand on his chest, and then their gun is raised up, tilted to the right, inches away from the guy's chest. Now, there's 100 reasons how that could go wrong by no fault of the suspect or the cops. Again, in our chat room, they're like, a hair trigger would escalate this accidentally in a heartbeat. And there's an argument that it does. But the reality is that you have to look at how we respond to threats of violence and violence in this country. And quite frankly, our overreaction of it, especially to it by people who are incredibly well armed, who are wearing bulletproof vests, who are dealing with an assailant who hasn't drawn, who they may have, quote unquote, a phone in their hand that they think is a gun, but that gun isn't up. And I know everybody wants to go home safe. I understand it, and I have family who are in law enforcement, and they deal with this stuff all the time. There was a shooting that one of my relatives was involved in, where an assailant who was domestic violence scene. The man was beating his wife. The cops showed up to deal with it. He ran out the side. They gave chase. He got into his car and tried to run over the police officers. Not try to escape and they were in the way. He turned his car towards them. And they shot him and he was killed. And the issue they had was they had to go have a press conference as quickly as possible saying, look, this guy didn't have a gun, but he was trying to run us down with a car. He was a danger to people and needed to be stopped. And had we not shot him, he would have run over not just a police officer, in this process, but there's no reason to expect he would stop killing people once he left. And again, a violent wife beater. But by the time the story could trickle down, they were afraid that this story would get pushed into cops open fire and a guy sitting unarmed in his car because other cops had done that. So every time cops do this, they make it so much harder for other police officers to simply carry out their normal duties in a very difficult situation. It is an argument for weeding out bad cops as quickly as possible. It's one of the reasons why police stations and departments have the policy of pulling someone off of duty if they've been involved in a shooting for a period of time until an assessment is done. That's a smart policy to have. But ultimately, these cops deal with their own in a lot of ways. And so they have this experience where the only person that we need to address in this, if we can assess as quickly as possible that it was a good shoot, then we get to the mental health of the officer, then we get them back on as fast as possible. And there are people in our chat room saying, cops saying I was afraid for my life has made murder legal, that fired for shooting cops just go to other jurisdictions. These are all problems. And they need to be systemically handled. And by the way, that's where the federal government steps in. That's where the Justice Department looks at a police department or a police officer who was involved in a clearly prejudiced, racist, bigoted, or flat-out negligent shooting, moving to another district and just setting up shop there and doing it again. So, sorry, did you say something, Johnny?
I just said,
Yep. That's where the federal government comes in. And then Trump's White House, Sarah Sanders says this week, well, we view that as a local matter. There is only a federal solution in these circumstances. If the locals aren't doing anything, and then again, this also goes to the NRA and the legal gun owners idea. If you guys can't police yourselves, and clearly you can't, then somebody else has to, because the tyrant I'm worried about is not sitting in a position of power telling soldiers that I don't think would really open fire on me if they were asked to. You've used that fear, you've ginned up that fear and driven it to, I now have to worry that my neighbor isn't currently stockpiling weapons of war for the day he decides to snap. We got to take a break. We'll be back. It's the House Marks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Pruitt's been helping the Trump.
Hell,
Yeah.
okay. We're having issues with the Comcast and the timelines. I tested both timelines that we have back there.
Yeah.
And it's not connecting for me. I tested it through my phone too.
Yeah.
It's not connecting.
Yeah, it's not you.
Oh, Matt,
It's
it's
not.
It's
Tie line.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I called the engineer. I left them a message.
Right. Because it's Saturday morning.
Please fix this.
So I want you to know this is not, you are doing everything right. This is not you. I just needed it. Yeah.
Well, that's why next week I'm coming in on Fridays now to make sure.
All right. And well, you know what? I'll do a test with you. I'll do a test with you on Fridays. If you want to text me that you're there,
Yeah.
I'll pop on and do it with, do the setup. Yeah.
Bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't make no sense for me, and it's like I'm
No.
losing my hair.
Oh, seriously.
Losing my hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's this is clearly because it says network error, so it's not
Yeah.
us. It's not the receiver. It's the in between, and it goes to tie line before it gets to us. So they either, and there's an entire, it could be reasonable that they are suffering a denial, a dedicated denial of service attack or something like that, because they are, an important part of the infrastructure. It would not be surprising to me if we found out that they were undermined, So we shall see what we shall see, but we'll continue as possible. I don't know if Mikey's calling in. I was expecting him, so hopefully he'll call in. I don't know if I'll be able to talk to him though.
Yeah, because I only see Matt from Chicago, Carl from Nashville,
Right.
and all from Seattle.
Okay.
Those are the only ones I know.
And I'm not hearing an echo when I talk to you right now, so I don't know what happens when we go on air. But I hear an echo.
Is your phone too close to the mic? Could it be?
No. I'm literally, there is no other mic or whatever. I'm just talking straight to you. This, if you know,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay. Well,
we'll figure it out. But it's
Okay.
just like as a heads up, I'll let you know if I still hear it when we go on the air. But it's when I beep on and you can hear me. When I know I'm heard from the radio, I can hear that. I can hear and it's a pretty pronounced one. So clearly it's just the mix minus from my voice. It's just going to one channel it's not supposed to,
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna create one.
Okay.
Hold on. You got about,
Love it.
Let me see.
Couple
Less than
minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
No, 2.5.
Great.
2.5. Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, don't worry about it. No, I love you, and it pains me when you feel like you have to run around and solve this stuff, because I know tech wise when I can tell when it's us or when it's me or when they've rewired the board on you. I've never been in a situation where I've ever gone, what did Lady B do? What? Never.
You know what they're trying to do? Put the Facebook cameras here. So I see all kinds of wires here, and they connected the new cameras.
Right.
So I don't know if they mess with the timeline too. So
I can't imagine why, but anyway.
right.
So yeah, so
And
weird.
I know in the future, I know they said they want to try see if they can connect you through the Facebook Live using your YouTube.
Oh well, I
I don't know how.
No, we should have. There's a thing called Discord, which is like Skype that gamers use. We need to set up a channel for Discord on a little laptop as an emergency fallback, because it sounds just like radio. It's fine. It's so good. And
I'm gonna have them look into it.
yeah, it's a little more secure than that, but basically all we need is just to set up a laptop that sends and receives my signal or whoever's calling, in as far as host wise, and isolate that. It doesn't have to be in a network. You know what I mean? It's just a source, right?
Yeah,
And
that's how we had it with Mighty House with Richard when he was doing it from Florida.
right, that's exactly right. They use Skype or something,
Okay.
but Discord's the same thing. It's just clearer. So, but it will be a necessary fallback, especially in this case where it's clearly Tie Line's issue, not us.
Yeah.
So, and not yours. I wouldn't, if it came down and landed on my shoulders, I would completely take it. But 100%, it is not your fault, Lady B. I need you to know that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bless you. Okay, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere. And for great last-minute travel deals.
I'm on, I think. I still hear stuff, but... Are we on, guys? I don't... No. Oh, no. Here we go. Okay, good.
I don't care for you if it appears like this prowling out.
Frustrate little pimp stick.
True progressive talk. Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
welcome back to the show. So I do hear a little of an echo, Lady B. I need to mix minus myself. It's the only reason my rants get a little staggered. Fear not. But in the process of dealing with our technical issues, it reminds me of our good Russian friends, our lovely Russian friends who were kicked out this weekend from a bunch of spies in Seattle. Who, by the way, maybe I'm becoming cynical in all this, and maybe the fact that the White House spokespeople, and not Sarah Sanders necessarily, but the State Department spokesperson, people who don't really get as much press, they seem 100% all in on bagging on the Russians, right? There it goes. Now it's gone. Yay, thank you. But now can I hear Johnny? Johnny, are you there? Yeah, you're good. So maybe it's the fact that Trump still just does not have a bad word to say about Putin or what the Russians did. But I tend to, when we have little technical difficulties like this, I tend to think about all these Russians running around and the fact that they have access to our entire infrastructure. But I will say this, my cynical side says, you know what? I think he had a conversation with Putin and said, which of the I have to shut down one of these bases the Senate is making me. I don't want to. I love you. I love everything about you, but I don't want to. I have to shut down a base. Which one can I? And he's like, you can just move out Seattle. We don't even need it anymore. All the bugs are in place. We've got people working at Google and Amazon, so we don't even really need it anymore. It's just a showpiece, you know what I'm saying? And it's too rainy. I don't like going there. So pull down the one in Seattle, and let me see. You can kick out. I'll give you a list of people you can kick out because we don't need them anymore. They've done their job. Like, I get really cynical about this, weird relationship that Trump has with Putin. And while all the news is talking about, oh my God, we're edging towards a new Cold War. Oh my God, this is all getting very dangerous. All this is, all this stuff is happening. To me, the reality, I mean, I see this all as international pawn making, and I try to avoid the kind of the conspiracy aspect of it, But the fact is that we've moved past, in the Russian investigation, past the idea of collusion, which is just you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, to the conspiracy aspect of what's more than likely is you scratch our back or we'll publish the pee-pee tape. And so there was there's a bunch of stories coming out. This one just came out yesterday, that the Justice Department announced Friday that this guy, Yevgeny Nikolin's sudden appearance in San Francisco federal courtroom after an 18-month legal tug-of-war with Russian government, which made a competing claim to extradite Nikolin. Nikolin was arrested in Prague, and 3 days later, on October 5th, 2016, 3 days later, then President Barack Obama made his first accusation of Russian meddling in the U.S. election. On the 20th, Nikolin was indicted on federal charges of hacking the private user databases of 3 internet giants, LinkedIn, Dropbox, and Formspring, and mail accounts tied to Google. The indictment alleges Nikolin used several aliases, including China Big One and IT Black Hat. He was extradited to the United States from Prague, and essentially Russia was trying to extradite him to their country under charges to try and, basically they'll keep him. Russia and the United States both sought his extradition. Russia's request sought to bring Nikolin back to the country to face minor internet theft charges that many observers felt were cobbled together in order to keep Nikolin from testifying, or from falling into American hands and divulging potentially embarrassing information about Kremlin intelligence operations. So we got this guy. And then we had another member of the Trump team picked up at Logan Airport. In what's become a new habit by the guys at over at the Mueller team, and it's pretty impressive that they seriously but here's the thing, they show up. Thank you, Natalie. Natalie says thanks for getting the show on even with all the technical issues. Well, hey man, I'm committed. Appreciate it, and thank you for adopting one of Summer's kittens that she had from the rescue. And so these guys, when they pick these guys up, again, it's not like we got to tip this guy's landing, let's just nab him. They show up ready to roll. The Mueller team, when they pick these guys up, they have a warrant for them, all their electronic devices and their luggage. They have if they have a location that they're flying to that they live in, they already have a warrant for that place so that they pick you up, you're going home, you've flown overseas, you land, they've got a warrant for all your electronic devices that you have on you, and you might have at home, and then you ultimately find that they have a warrant for, when they have a warrant for your house, they take you into custody for a short time, and while you're in custody, they go through your house to find all this stuff. And why do they do that? What's the big one? And we'll get to callers in right after the next break, and we'll give one last try to try and solve the issue. And if not, what we'll do is trade off, and Johnny will be the question asker in case I get a feedback issue being on the phone at the same time. We cool with that, Johnny? You good?
Sure, my questions will be like, what? Huh?
Yeah, that's about right. So, why do they do this? Well, because when people are spies, or quite frankly, when they're in major corporate criminals, they destroy their devices when they're caught. They blank devices. They have codes on stuff, especially on laptops, that if you enter the wrong password 6 times, it erases everything. I mean, you're dealing with major criminal activity. These people have fail-safes to protect themselves. So unless you roll up on them immediately, unsuspecting, in a situation where they feel like, there's 2 things why you grab somebody in an airport. One is they're not armed. You know that for sure. They just got off a plane. And also, they're expecting a certain level of scrutiny because you've just gone through TSA. So psychologically, they're a lot more malleable than if you walk up on them on the street. And it's a logical move on Mueller's team, and they have cornered the market on it. This is the 3rd time, and we're going to see more of this as it goes down. There was a lot of squirrely moves last week about protecting Mueller because there was a lot of, obviously, around Trump. There was a lot of people either to cover for Stormy Daniels and his sort of embarrassed silence and his sort of general weirdness, attacking Amazon and making their stock drop, that there was a bunch of people going, okay, this guy might snap and actually, attack Mueller and get rid of him, really make the attempt. And if so, we're going to need a bill in place that's ready to be passed and signed. So they're prepped, and the Senate, certainly the House has no interest in continuing this investigation, but the Senate knows that if you don't, there will be a post-Trump world. If we're not destroyed, and yeah, well, they're counting on it at least. Any of the Republicans who are counting on there being a post-Trump America know that if you set a legal precedent, you have to live with that legal precedent in future. And believe me, the kid gloves are off when it comes to judgeships from now on. The next, it's going to be brutal. And the Supreme Court especially, when the next Democrat gets in, they're just going to have to bulldoze and get people on because they don't trust that if they wait patiently like normal, and run through the regular process, that they're going to play fair. And the same thing is true of these people walking through these airports with their electronic devices on them. There are enough of these dudes who've, tossed their, phones out a train window or dropped them in the toilet hoping they'd fritz them out, or set them on fire when they know they're being raided, or any of those things, to know that you don't give them a chance. And so anyways, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll do an attempt at callers. I think it will work. We'll start with Carl from Nashville because he's beloved, and we'll get to who amongst our callers really isn't, quite frankly. We got a good group, but we'll see who else is waiting on the line when we come back too. Right after this, it's the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide.
Because he's committing political malpractice yet again. He's drowning out his own good news because he is simply trying to cover up Russiagate.
The Norman Goldman Show, weeknights at 5 on WCPT 820.
I'm Lane Gibson, General Manager at Midtown Toyota. I've been with our auto group for 14 years. We have a unique view on the car business because we focus on you. We're a family-owned community car dealer, and we welcome everyone to stop in and see for yourself. Our goal is to help you select a car that meets your specific needs and your budget. Buying a car shouldn't be a hassle.
Hey, so you have a minute and 30.
Cool. Thank you. And thanks for fixing the feedback. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, Trump's tweets about Amazon are 1 in a million. Yeah.
Okay, 60 seconds.
Cool.
So when we go to the callers, we did this thing on the board where we turned the queue on.
Uh-huh.
See if you could hear them as well.
Okay.
But if you get too much of that feedback that you were getting before,
Yep.
you're gonna turn off the. You're gonna take out the OL
Okay, great.
and see if you can still hear them.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
7 in the morning, or book an appointment online at Total Dentist.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
See, Lady B gets it right every time. Let's go to Carl from Nashville and see if I can actually hear him while he speaks. Let's give it a try. I'm feeling spicy since we're in the middle of all these tech difficulties.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Line 5. Carl?
Is he there?
Is he there? Oh, no.
Carl?
Carl? I feel like I hear a phone.
That's me.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
We're still pointing at it.
Nope. Okay. We'll try to figure it out. I think it's just a tech looping part. I apologize, Carl. Or Carl's just giving us the silent treatment. He just. Was that me or you? Okay. So yeah, turn off the queue because I'm getting the feedback again. But thank you, and I apologize to the callers today. It's just it's too much heavy lifting for me and Lady B and the crew and Johnny to try and make that happen. I apologize. Your voices are always welcome with us, though, for the record. So, the story around, Alton Sterling, obviously that will lead to a civil trial. We'll see how that plays out, but clearly the officer, Blaine Salamone, they said, let's see, sitting down with CNN host Christy Pauley, attorney Paige said that at the very least, police officer Blaine Salamone, who also threatened and cursed Sterling, should have been charged in the shooting and faced a jury. Following the officer pulled the trigger was fired instead of following an explanation that the officer pulled the trigger was fired instead of prosecuted. Pate said he was stunned by the decision.
We chose the wrong time to go to Carl. Lady B is now compelled to go back to Carl.
Oh yeah.
Hey guys, can you...
Yeah, now we hear you.
Hey.
Yeah, that was on me.
Oh.
No, it was not. I set the phone down on accident and picked it up. Listen,
Is Mercury in retrograde? I don't want anybody to argue with me about Mercury in retrograde.
Hey, listen, all the efforts you guys have put forth to bring us the show, and I screw it up by setting my phone down. Listen now.
Yeah.
And this is the honest to God truth, and it's a truth that a lot of people really don't want to hear or don't want to face in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is a problem until it's happening to white people in our country, and it's just a fact. And if you don't, look at the war on drugs. When it was in the inner city and it was affecting black people, just lock them up. They're criminals. They're animals. They need to be locked up. No mercy for them. But then when it started leaking out into the suburbs, now we got DARE and stuff like that. And later on, now we have the meth and the heroin epidemic and everything. And let's be compassionate. Let's help these people.
Mm-hmm.
Where the hell was the help in the 80s when it was ravaging inner cities?
Right.
It was lock them up. That was the solution. Lock them up and throw away the key. 3 strikes, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the tape, if you look at the infrared from the helicopter,
Oh, man.
For technology,
Yep.
the damn man was laying on the ground when they shot him.
Yes.
He was literally laying on the ground. What more would you have a person to do other than when he was laying on the ground? You could see the bullets, the infrared. You could see the bullets sparking around him.
Yeah.
And you could see the moment when he stopped moving.
It
got to the point where so many bullets had hit the man where he wasn't even moving anymore. His body didn't even have a reaction because he was dead.
Well, he was. Here's the thing. He was not dead. They said he was alive for another 3 to 10 minutes, and had he received emergency medical treatment, he may have survived. Now, I think that's a reach, but the fact that they didn't even try, he still had a pulse. Like at a certain point, and again, there's a mixture of things, and I think you're certainly right, in these circumstances as far as race being a part of it. But class also plays a huge part in it, because if you look at the OxyContin, oxycodone epidemic, until it started killing middle-class white people, it was basically purging Southern families of their annoying relatives for a while.
And then it started getting into the cabinets of the privilege.
That's right. That's right.
But I'm telling you.
But yeah,
I swear.
I agree.
I know this country inside out. This is my country.
Mm-hmm.
This is my country. I know my country.
Mm-hmm.
And unless it's happening it would have gotten around to helping them because they're white, and it's just a fact. I mean, there's no way of parsing this. It's a harsh reality, and that's what it is.
Right.
Because if a white guy was standing outside a convenience store in Kentucky and got choked out, if a white guy was running away from the police officer and they shot him in his back and then laid something by his side,
Right.
If a white guy was jumping back into his backyard, I mean, there would be outrage. Something would be done.
There's a video.
We run around in circles about why this keep happening. Why it keep happening because it keep happening to black people.
Mm-hmm.
And until it start happening to white people on a regular basis, we're like he said, it's starting to bleed in his mind. He's starting to put one case with another case with another case because it happens so frequently.
Right.
And
Well, the same thing is true of school shootings. You know, and yeah.
To use a sport analogy is when you can't quite remember who won what championship when. You can remember kind of sort of which teams was in there because they all kind of bleed into each other, no pun intended, throughout the years. That's how it is now. I mean, you kind of lose track on which one had happened. And if all these guys were white, it doesn't matter if they were rich, it doesn't matter if they were poor, it doesn't matter if the middle class. If all these things start bleeding in our mind of white guys getting shot in the back by police officers, we would have a problem. I mean,
well, we do have it with children. We do have it with children. I will say this: we do have it with school shootings, and there is an argument to be made that above all, the gun lobby has this weird abject control over even well-to-do white people. That there's the Laura Ingrams of the world, the Ben Shapiros of the world, the Bill O'Reillys of the world, certainly the Sean Hannitys of the world. There is a sense that they are willing to sacrifice a certain number of their dead children for the right to own multiple, like, heavy ammunition, firing weapons. Like, you know what I mean? They are willing to as a side, and I agree with you about, especially about police-involved shootings. This is clearly, unless that there's a tipping point in who is being shot, and I would include in that even Latinos and Asians.
We'll continue to have marches. We'll continue to have thoughts and prayers.
And nothing.
Not a damn thing is going to get done
Right.
until it started seriously. And unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. And another thing that's really not being talked about a whole lot, even if someone called in and said someone is breaking out windows, that's not enough to warrant the death
Right.
penalty. If you have to take that as a loss. If you got a guy running away from you and he's getting away from you, you don't sentence someone to death because they were
Broke windows, right. Absolutely.
We don't even know if this was a guy that was smashing out the windows. They just picked a random guy, started chasing him down, and shot him in the back as he ran away. You don't shoot after someone
For vandalism.
because they're getting away from you.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing if you know for a fact that this is a guy that just robbed a convenience store and he just shot some people. Yes, by all means, go after him.
Right.
But if you got a guy that's just been called in for vandalism and he's running away and he got away from you, guess what? Your fat ass just have to take that as an L that this man outran you. You don't sentence him to death because you can't catch up with him.
Well, you also do this. You also do the police work. You also go, all right, he ran off. Give me a description. Do you know him? Honestly, we go door to door in the close neighborhood. Anybody else seen this guy? Whether they want to give it or not. And then you develop a community relationship.
Yeah, him, that's Jim that live up the street. Jim is the one that was out here busted. You do police work. I mean, God
Yes.
forbid,
Right.
policemen have to do police work.
That's right. But I will say, and I do want to.
You shoot a guy and then cut your mics off. I mean, why are you cutting your mics off?
Right.
The story together, you look guilty. You look
Totally.
bad. And then, like I said, with the guy that's at the convenience store that the owners gave permission to sell the music out or whatever he was selling, they gave him permission. The man laying down on his stomach on the concrete, you shoot him in the back 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
So to me, what's going to happen is it's going to be an outrage, you're going to have protests, and then it's going to be forgotten, and then about a year from now, the officers are going to be acquitted, but then our attention is going to be diverted somewhere because some other black man.
Well, this is what happened with school shootings for the longest time. It took the one big and we gotta take a break. But I want to say this to you, like, specifically. Yeah, appreciate it, Carl. What happened with the Parkland shooting is exactly what Carl is talking about needs to happen or will happen to be a turning point in police-involved shootings of unarmed black men, period. That there's going to be some sort of incident that is the last straw. I thought it would be Trayvon Martin, as did a lot of people. And then a couple of months later, a cop shot a 12-year-old holding a toy gun. So, I don't even allow myself to be surprised anymore. But I will say, that if and like I said, we got to take a break. Until the Parkland survivors were able to speak for themselves, that once you had back in the Columbine days, everybody was so shocked and it wasn't so, it was bizarre. And then you had parents speaking out, but these are adults, and therefore Fox News thinks they can attack adults on the same playing field as anyone else, even though it's an adult who's just lost a child, for Christ's sake. They think they can get away with it. Well, with the Parkland shooters, the kids themselves who had just seen it, been involved in it, experienced it firsthand, they finally got to say everything that the victims in these shootings that happen again and again and again need to say. And that's why this was a tipping point. And I think the same thing will be true of the opioid epidemic. And I think the same thing will be true of, police-involved shootings of unarmed black men in our country. There's a very distinct shift that, one of these things will have to strike fire in people's minds in a way that's beyond protests, or even politics. So... anyways, that we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, with 100% more Johnny Million. Cheers, Norm. Yeah, she's on Laura Ingram's on a vacation. Heh. See if I can find this story that relates to this. Yeah. Yeah, I was looking up part of the story of that woman who was shot in Minneapolis.
So, what could you do with $10?
We'll talk about it in a minute. Staycation. Okay. Thank you, Fessa Frink, by the way, for the MSD students and a few dollars more. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
2984 800
Now back to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So I don't know if you recall, and this kind of relates to Carl's phone call. Remember the Australian woman who was shot in Minneapolis? I think it was. It was in Minnesota for sure.
Oh yeah.
Justine something. I have to look it up. So this.
The Australians were pretty happy about that.
Yeah, Justine Damond. I almost said Diamond. This woman, she was shot and killed. Now, again, this falls into another category because she was a tourist too. She was, she was a foreign national on American soil. So that's going to draw even more attention than just your average white lady walking down the street getting shot on, being unarmed and shot by a cop. But even still, her officer was charged with murder and I think manslaughter, as well. There was like a dual charge on it. It's, but do you remember what his name was and where he was from?
Billy Ray Killer from I Gotta Shoot Ya, Arizona.
No, that guy would have gotten off. His name was Mohammed Noor, and he was he was the first Somali police officer on the Minneapolis police department. He was,
He went to the top of the I Told You So list.
Right, yeah, exactly. This is all the, the right wingers went, see, this is what happens. This is what happened. But what happened to him was he got charged with murder and he went to jail. Meanwhile, Alton Sterling's, the cop that killed him, got fired, will face a civil trial, but will not be charged with a crime. So,
And I get it, but I don't.
yeah, it's weird. And again, Carl is right. It will take this will continue to happen until one of these strikes a chord in such a way, and I don't understand, I forget, and I think I deal with the same thing. It's like school shootings, which were which, and the same thing with these stories. But the one of these guys was a licensed gun owner, told the cops he had a gun in his car, and said it's in the glove box, and they shot him. And the NRA didn't come to this guy's defense. What's that again about a tyrannical government and your right to bear arms legally? They didn't give a crap because the guy was black. And that is something that is a constant scar on this, in this argument that we continually have about the rights and freedoms of people to have and bear arms, mixed with this, respect for police, which I think is due most police officers. I do not, envy them the hard work that they do every single day. Let's be abundantly clear. The bad cops are massively outnumbered by the good cops. But the reality is that every time one of these cops does something like this, or a pair of them does something like this, and they get away with it, meaning they get basically to move to another department, like you said, ultimately the rest of the cops are like, well, I don't really lose my livelihood, and plus that against my the maybe I'll die today, reaction, and the machismo of that, of having to have fired a shot that circulates in a situation where you feel like you're at war, especially in really rough neighborhoods. There's no real impetus for a change in behavior. There just isn't. And the only reality that you're seeing is that fewer good people signing up to be cops, and a lot of troublemakers deciding, well, damn, if you can get away with it, this is where I want to be. And that's a really, thank you, Act, in our chat room. That was Philando Castile who did that. So, but, we have to understand. That's right. So, let's take another caller, though. Let's see if we can do that. Who do we have?
All right, we're going to...
Come on in. We taking who, sorry? I lost you. Do I still have you guys? Oh, I'm on hold. Oh. Hey, there you are. Gotcha.
Let me ask you this. Do
Yeah.
other countries have SWAT incidents, like swatting incidents, as far as we know?
As far as you mean like
the SWAT prank.
not really. No. I mean, not any measurable level. I mean, they have them. They have wrong door murders quite frequently in most of the Eastern Bloc. That happens a lot. And there's obviously a lot of tattletale murders, which is you use the cops as your own police force. That happens in Mexico. It happens in South America. You call, instead of, if you can't get the cops to, behave the way you want, then ultimately you have to, I guess, set them up. If you can't bribe the cops to kill the bad guy that you want killed, then you set that guy up. You say he's kidnapped somebody or he's got a gun or whatever. Yeah. Those things happen. So those equivalents.
The reason why I ask,
yeah.
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The reason why I ask is because while that poor fellow was getting shot in his grandmother's backyard for, let's just say it, being black, and having a phone in his hand, in Scotland, there was a 45-minute police standoff outside of a barn house.
Yep.
Because they thought that. Sorry, I'm an Uber and somebody just tried to get in my car thinking I was theirs. So they were. Sorry. They said outside a barn house for 45 minutes, assuming that there was a live tiger sitting in the barn house.
Uh-huh.
When they finally busted in and shot the poor thing, it turned out it was a stuffed animal. A very, very lifelike stuffed animal.
I feel safer.
So,
don't you?
well, that is true. But the fact of the matter is, if Scotland has such a dedicated police force that will hold their fire for 45 minutes for a stuffed animal,
right?
Do you think it's possible that we can have a police force that cannot shoot somebody 40, well, I guess it was 48 times because the first shot flipped him around, and then the other 47 would have killed him regardless. So if we can have one police force in this country that doesn't just automatically, oh, it's a black person, let's shoot him, then maybe there's hope for us.
Yeah, it's obviously a possibility. That's the shame of it. Obviously, we can interact with people as human beings and judge incident by incident and train police officers to judge incident by incident and understand that they are not soldiers. This is also a problem too, is that a lot of guys who were ex-military or lean military or couldn't get into the military, which is the really scary group, decide to become police officers because, especially in areas where they need cops so badly, that they kind of lower their standards a little bit. And these guys, they have a war mentality. They look at it as a battle on the streets for, and not for justice, certainly, but just they look at it like us against them. And when you have a situation like that, there's a reason why we don't let the military police the streets of America. Why it's against the Constitution to do so is because a mentality that's created in that circumstance is really dangerous. Because American citizens, even the armed ones, aren't your adversary. They're not, until you've given them an adversarial role in the legal situation. If we're talking about somebody who's opening fire on police officers and they're returning fire, that's a completely different thing. But until the moment that person opens fire, the adversarial opportunity is still in existence. And again, this is the flip side of what I was talking about how each of these they always, with these guns, like, I might need all these guns to shoot back against the tyrannical government. Well, you have every opportunity, even if you look at Ruby Ridge or Waco, they had the legal opportunity, if they were in the right, to defend themselves and redefend themselves without ever taking a life in the process. But that's not what they were doing. And the minute you open fire and that's your solution, then the solution from the police officers and whoever's engaging with you is exactly the same. Up until that point, though, every adversarial opportunity in our legal system is open to you as a citizen. You have that right. It's one of the reasons why people used to go into custody. It's why people turn themselves in to police departments, because they have, you know, that even if you're guilty, you have the right to a fair trial. And in the process of that fair trial, you can present reasons why you think what you did wasn't murder. You might still call it manslaughter, but I don't think or I call it self-defense, and here's my defense about it. And the minute that adversarial opportunity breaks down, and every engagement with the police involves sentencing, i.e. death, then the whole thing falls apart. That's the crux of our civil society. Police have why cops are heroes to us is because they might take a bullet, not because they can throw them. Anybody can shoot up a bunch of places. Like, a school shooter can lay out what they think is justice against bullies by killing a bunch of random kids in a school. There's no pride in being able to shoot someone to death. There isn't. The pride of being a police officer comes that you're willing to take the damage for the rest of us, and it is why we honor them. And if they toss that aside and open fire on anybody that even looks at them wrong, that collapses, especially if it seems to be racially biased, because that's the equality aspect of our constitutional government is what makes us special as a country. And if we start having a police department that's just seeded with military nut jobs who wish this was South Africa circa 1978, then America ceases to be, what its promise. It ceases to live up to its promise. We got to take a break. I appreciate you calling in, and I hope you do find whoever you are truly supposed to Uber. All right. We got to take a break. It's the Housemarks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Mm-hmm. Well, the right wing thinks they're the adversary. If they weren't guilty, they would not have been shot while black or Hispanic. Yeah, but I agree, Billy. But the point I'm making is that we have an adversarial justice system where you get to make your case and the state gets to make its case. And if you're dead, you don't get to make that case anymore. And if you want to get into a situation where the government at any point can just judge dread you out of existence, then I don't know what argument lays within any of that. So, I don't know why they would ultimately be for that, except that they think that they'll have a. There was some talk of like friends of the Bush administration, like Cheney's friends, were all going to get what was called a KMA card, Kiss My Ass card, that they could carry with them. And if a cop pulled them over because of who they were, they could just hold up the Kiss My Ass card and just keep driving, do whatever they want. I mean high crimes. For many in the right wing, us not letting the bullies bully us is bullying to them. That's exactly right, Ginger. I mean, you could argue that that's been the entire response to David Hogg. Blue Shield is a tough one, sadly. Brad, it has to be because of what cops deal with. I'll give you an example. Mohammed Noor, the guy who shot the Australian tourist, he had 3 open investigations into him before that. One of them was when he'd removed a woman who was violent and flipping out from a place. They ended up arresting her. She filed charges against him for grabbing and holding her. That has to go through the whole process. He has to fight back against that. Thanks, Lisa Ann. He may have been very well been wrong in that because of what he led to later on, but it also might have been that he was right. In that situation, and she was just, one of these people picking on a cop who was arresting someone who deserved to be arrested. And you at some point, they're like, they manhandled me. And like, well, you're fighting back, and they're arresting you.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
That's right. Welcome back. Let's grab. I think we have another caller, so let's see if we can get them since it's working so well. Yeah.
Try line 3 because I like his name, Mo.
Right on. Hey, Mo.
Hey, Mo.
Hello, Hal.
Hey, Mo. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to venture to say that the women's and children's rebellions have revealed a truth about our society that has been true of no previous society in human prehistory and history. And that truth is that this society, at the very least, fails to protect its women and children, which are obviously necessary to the survival of the society. It even promotes attacks on women and children. Specifically, the NRA has facilitated the supplying weapons to thousands of murderers. Now, it was done on a mass scale. They didn't know who was going to commit the murder. But I want to draw a comparison. The Communist Party will be celebrating its 100th anniversary in America next year. And in that near 100 years, the Communist Party has not supplied arms to anybody who ever killed anybody else.
What?
The NRA...
What? Wait a minute. Hold on. The Chinese Communist Party deals in arms all over the world.
Chinese. I didn't say Chinese. I'm just talking about the American Communist Party.
Well, that's because they don't have the ability to do so. That's like saying the Libertarian Party has never given weed to anyone.
Finish my comparison and
Okay.
then you can tell me what you
Okay.
think of it. Okay. The Communist Party was actually at one point around 1954 was actually outlawed. Even before that, any member of the Communist Party was prevented from getting a government job. That was Joe McCarthy's issue.
Right.
Okay. The NRA has been responsible for facilitating, let us say, the arming of thousands of murderers in this country. Let's just apply the minimum weapon, indeed, against the NRA that we applied against the Communist Party and declare them a subversive organization. Don't outlaw them, but prohibit the hiring in the federal government, at least, of any member of the NRA to receive government salaries that will facilitate further arming of murderers.
I mean, I love the sound of the idea. On a practical note, essentially what you would have to do is gin them up as a lobbying firm, which is ultimately is what they are. And anybody working for the NRA or working with the NRA or the gun manufacturing lobby or in any other capacity would not be able to have a government job. And then you'd have to have a revolving door anti-policy for 5 years after. So they couldn't decide, well, I'll get in there. I can't work with them before, then I'll go work for the government, and then I'll bail out.
In a way, you've gone even more. Well, you looked at a possibility I hadn't considered, but our ideas overlap.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I'm not against that. I mean, you're right that but again, the NRA is a lobbying group, and there is laws against. Technically speaking, we're supposed to have anyways, however it's enforced, an anti-lobbyist stint in as far as regulation of areas. We keep it narrowcast, unfortunately, to the area, in which you are, employed, which it obviously doesn't work either because it got us Scott Pruitt is a great example. We've got,
I'm not following your point.
I'm saying that right now, the idea is that nobody in the NRA should be working in government, especially when it comes to gun policy or military policy or anything with the DoD or the law enforcement, any of that stuff, because they are a lobbying group for a product that those companies use, right? There's a law in place that you could technically do that.
Yeah, okay.
But obviously we are not enforcing that currently because look who we've got in charge of the EPA. We've got Scott Pruitt, who's a polluter himself, set up a private phone booth like the Dick Cheney safes in his office so that he can make secretive phone calls with his polluter buddies without his own staff and quote-unquote the deep state. You know, so I think it's a great idea. How we do it is a matter of enforcement. It's a matter of voting, quite frankly, because I feel like Democrats, you know, don't tend to put, you know, Edward Snowden said during the election that this election is a decision between Donald Trump and Goldman Sachs. He was slamming Hillary Clinton as a stooge of Goldman Sachs and saying that, you know, if you want a change, you're going to want Donald Trump. Steve Mnuchin worked for Goldman Sachs. Donald Trump couldn't wait to fill his cabinet with the very people that we were told he would not. And Hillary Clinton made more money speaking to the UC regents than she did talking to Goldman Sachs. But that didn't stop anybody from dampening the vote around here. So I think ultimately what it rolls down to is we have rules in place, but you have to elect people who will enforce them. And that's the biggest problem that I have.
I would like to find an independent candidate here in Illinois to run advocating this idea of the government not hiring NRA officials, at least, if not applying it to members.
Yeah, but they won't do it because most independent candidates.
The issue hasn't been raised yet.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move. I think it will land like Kennedy's expression, but I do think you could make a case that the NRA as a lobbying group should be related as such, and any money taken from them should be marked especially. And the biggest problem the NRA has right now is the fact that they're taking money from Russia, and they got a big chunk of money. They didn't. Yes, what they're saying is, oh, we have 2 bank accounts, and there the twain shall meet. But then when they did their books, you know, which is part of what they're holding back right now and why the Congress has asked for them, is that they absolutely let some of the money from one of the accounts get in the other account, and therefore they're just funneling money from Russia to accounts. And that may account for some of the money that the Dallas Morning News found ended up, you know, the $7.6 million that ended up in GOP coffers, including Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, et al. In doing this. So... yeah, so there.
You've contributed something valuable to my thinking.
Well, thank you. I attempt to every Saturday, and I appreciate you calling in and giving us that analogy because you've contributed as well. I will say because the idea that
I'm really glad I talked to you.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Call in again anytime. We really appreciate it. We're almost out of time on the show, so call in earlier next time. We'd love to talk to you. So yeah. Bye. Cheers. See that? Now we get started in a conversation. We can actually find a bridged version of that. Were you impressed, Johnny Million?
I'm not surprised, but always impressed.
Oh, not surprised, but always impressed. And so we got to take off, but thank you so much. Thank you, Lady B, for running around and solving your own problems. And who was at the board today? I don't know that anybody told me. Eli was at the board today. Okay. I kept talking to him, but I didn't know it was him. Hi, Eli. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you, everybody in the chat room. We love you guys. I'm doing them a show tonight, Rock Against MS in Los Angeles. If you're one of our internet listeners and you're there, the LA Theater downtown tonight.
He's playing the Cubby Bear. Come rock with AC/DC tonight at the Cubby Bear.
That's right. Love you. Talk to you later. Bye. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you, guys. Bye. Woo, that was a tall order. Hi, chat room. Let me make sure you guys can still hear me plenty. Although I don't know. Yeah, it's going through the right input. Again, I almost could have sourced the audio from YouTube, and it'd have been fine. Thank you guys so much. I got to run. I have to rest my voice. I can't do a post show today, just because I have to sing tonight, and I'm doing two audio. I'm doing an Audio Slave song. I'm doing Hunger Strike. I'm doing the and two's 01 is playing. So yeah, it was a lot. Thanks, Kind Stop Lying. It was a tall order. I appreciate it. Hi Hal 5x5. So I appreciate you guys. I'll do a a special pop on maybe over the next couple days or something to make up for the fact that I won't do a post show. But I got to rest my throat because I really do got to sing tonight. So take care of yourself, guys. Love you guys, and we'll see you very, very soon. All right. Bye.